Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third webinar in the Electrification Coalition's 2023 Charging Infrastructure webinar series. Today, we will be exploring best practices for partnering with utilities to kickstart your electrification projects. My name is Alyssa Lenkel, and I am an EV Infrastructure Associate with the Electrification Coalition, and I'll be moderating today's exciting discussion. We have an all-star lineup for today's panel with representation from the City of Phoenix, as well as Pepco, a larger public utility serving the DC area, and SOPEC, a rural energy commission working toward clean, reliable energy for Ohio. Before we introduce our speakers for the panel, I'd like to invite EC's own Torrin Spencer to set the scene on how and why utilities should be involved with EV fleets and charging projects. Torrin is well-versed in each step of this process, as he has been working with the Orlando Utilities Commission on their large-scale fleet electrification projects for years. Torrin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. Yeah, just like Alyssa said, my name is Torrin Spencer. I'm a senior associate with the Electrification Coalition, and we have been working with utilities for quite a while. We've been working with Orlando Utilities Commission since about 2020. Thanks, Alyssa. We started the programming with Orlando Utilities Commission in 2020. We ran an electrified dealership program. So back then we were working on increasing consumer adoption into electric vehicles, trying to create a more well-versed sales staff. That was all before we knew the consumer market was pretty well taken care of. There's a lot of demand for electric vehicles on that front. So in the beginning of 2023, Orlando Utilities Commission switched their focus and they started a fleet electrification program to increase EV adoption by fleet operators, whether that be large number of vehicles, small number of vehicles. If they own a business and have a car that happens to be a part of it, we're happy to help move that fleet to an electric fleet. We've been using a three-pronged approach to approach all those different fleet operators. We've started with educational events. We've worked with webinars. We've also taken different fleet operators to the City of Orlando Fleet Hub, where they actually got a chance to take a look at how EVs can be successfully implemented into a fleet setting. We're also running total cost of ownership analysis using Electrification Coalition's Drive tool, the dashboard for rapid vehicle electrification. And it all is going to culminate in a ride and drive event in October. We're hoping to have multiple different OEMs, charging providers, and all sorts of different fleet operators at SunTrax in Central Florida. So we're very much looking forward to that. If you need any more information on our programming or are in Central Florida, check out the QR code to go to that website. But what are your first steps if you're actually looking to electrify your vehicle, your fleet? If you're looking to get an EV and need a charger close to where that vehicle spends a lot of their time? Well, make sure to reach out to your utility early. Start those discussions, even if those plans aren't imminent. Early communication always helps out best. Choose a logical place for your chargers. Make a budget for everything, not just the cost of the vehicle, but also the cost of charging and implementation of that equipment, and also develop an analysis and transition plan. Figure out how many vehicles you may be having going into a specific spot. Work with your utility to try to figure out how much capacity you have left at your available location. Vehicle usage and storage is one of the first steps we discuss when talking to a fleet, trying to figure out what kind of vehicles they have now, what kind of electric vehicles they're going to end up getting. And there are more steps after that. We talk about what kind of chargers they're going to get, what kind of suggestions. Total cost of ownership analysis is spat out to switch some of those current gas vehicles to electric. And then going down the rabbit hole of getting site evaluations and all sorts of other steps going from the utility. That site evaluation I was talking about, once you know what types and quantity of charging stations you have, you want to schedule that site visit with your utility as soon as possible. They want to come out, take a look at the capacity available, figure out how much time it will take to get different parts to your location and what kind of costs it might require in order to implement all that different charging, maybe tearing up the ground a little bit to put it in. But These costs can vary quite a little bit. The capacity on site has to do with it, what kind of transformers you have, what capacity is available or still in use, and then also the distance from your panel to where those electric vehicles might be parked. There's a lot of considerations when you're talking to your utility, when your utility is trying to figure out how to best assist you in your electrification journey. You might be working with a lot of different people as well. As we all know, utilities are pretty large, a lot of point people for a lot of different really important projects, but you could work with a number of different departments. Key accounts management, or KAM, usually in charge of specific relationships with large account holders or even smaller ones. Development services, energy services are going over charging and lighting, where those pieces of equipment are being taken care of, where they're being implemented in and around their service territory. New products and services. EC works with new products and services at Orlando Utilities Commission pretty often. Also work with engineering, distribution planning, and also the key accounts again for the process of establishing new services. All of those different point people are probably going to be visiting you on that site evaluation when you're looking to put in charging. There's probably a lot of different service offerings as well from your utility. There's a lot of different ways to get charging and a lot of different ways to pay for it. OUC has a couple different options. Other utilities probably do as well, but option one is basically just purchasing all of that charging equipment outright. The utility would design and procure and install those chargers, but you'd pay for it at the time of installation, and then that location would own the charger and is responsible for the maintenance and operation. Another option would kind of be like leasing. So your utility would own, install, and maintain the charging stations, and then customers would obtain EV charging access for a fixed fee over a certain duration. And that fee is based on a multitude of factors. And there's a possibility you could own that after a certain amount of time as well. But on top of different service offerings, there are a lot of different incentives that utilities might offer to get charging stations to you. A lot of these utilities know that EVs are here. EVs are coming down the pipe pretty fast. And chargers need to be implemented at the same amount of speed. So you can see different incentives from KUA, Duke, Brickell Energy, all showing different ways that they can incentivize you to get those chargers. So look into your utility, see what options they have to help you out. There's probably something there. And if it's not posted, reach out to those key account managers, get in touch with them, see if they have any information that maybe you can't find on your own, and start that conversation to see how quickly you can get EVSE put into your location for your EV needs. But thank you, everybody, for having me. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I will turn it over to Alyssa.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Torin. That really set a strong foundation for the audience. I feel like we're all up to speed. And now as we go into those more niche and specific topics with our panelists, we will be ready. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists for today. We have those three panelists that I mentioned before, but up first in our panel, we have William Ellis. He's the Director of Governmental and External Affairs with the Potomac Electric Power Company, also known as Pepco. And William, if you'd like to introduce yourself a little bit, you can go ahead.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Thank you for having me today. First, I want to say thank you to the Electrification Coalition and my esteemed panel members for having me. I am the Director of Governmental and External Affairs for Pepco. We are a member of the Exelon family of companies. We are the nation's largest investor-owned utility, where we have around 10.9 million customers. At Pepco, we provide our energy service to the District of Columbia, the nation's capitals, where we serve roughly around 2 million customers within that. We have a number of EV programs, and excited to talk with you about them today. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Up next, we have Mark Hartman, who is Phoenix Chief Sustainability Officer. and he is charged to support Phoenix's continual efforts in becoming a global leader in sustainability. So Mark, if you'd like to elaborate on that for us, go ahead.
Oh, certainly, and good to be here today. Yeah, thank you. It's really interesting as we kind of look at, everyone wondering when is the EV evolution happening, and I've certainly been waiting for it. And our plan is actually for 280,000 electric vehicles in just the city of Phoenix alone by 2030. So we've been really saying that message of being the center of some of that national dialogue on how do we do this transition gracefully and elegantly, and actually where it's in the best approach.
Awesome, Mark. We're excited to have you. And finally, we're super grateful to have Luke Sulfridge join us. Luke serves as the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council Executive Director, where he leads organizational development and membership expansion strategies. So Luke, go ahead if you want to elaborate.
Yeah, I'd love to. So SOPEC is a council of governments. Ohio is one of the lucky states that has community choice aggregation. So we've utilized that strategy for deployment of green technologies. We have 100% green default through our CCA program, but we are also very active in deployment of electric car chargers. I'll brag real quick. First electric police car in the state of Ohio, first rural transit bus in the state of Ohio. We help support. We're also very active in solar deployment, both large and small. We're governed by the communities we serve. So at the end of the day, we are a government entity. There's back-end support for all the communities we serve.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke. Alrighty, so now that we've done our intros, we can just hop right into the questions. These first few questions will be for the group kind of at large. So as you guys have an answer, you can just go ahead and go for it. So the first question that I have for you is, what incentives and programs have you seen as the most effective to shape grid demand and accelerate fleet electrification?
I'll start. I'll first state, that we at Pepco, we're just committed to helping our customers, our states, our families, and the communities electrify their transportation fleet. And mainly because we know that transportation is one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. It's a very important aspect of fighting climate change and helping our cities and our states meet their goals. We have a couple of programs that we've implemented to help to shape the grid and accelerate fleet electrification. First, we started by looking at rates. We have a couple of rate options that our customers can take advantage of to help ensure that they're charging their EV infrastructures at times that has the most minimum impact to our electric distribution system. So we have implemented a whole house time of use rate for our residential customers that allows customers to sign up to take advantage of off-peak charging at about a 3-to-1 ratio. And so customers are able to benefit and have the price of electricity at a level that is extremely cheap compared to charging publicly or charging during peak hours. And so we feel that that program is working very, very well to just change behavior. Most of our customers, they just want to ensure that when they wake up in the morning, that their car is fully charged and that they can get to work or get to their destination. And so being able to charge after 7 p.m. is something that our customers take advantage of to save money. We also have an EV managed charging program and rate, and that's where customers allow us to have access during certain times in the summer to be able to control their charges for peak usage. And that also comes with a discounted rate as well. And so, time of use rates, behavioral mechanisms work well in ensuring that we don't have to overbuild the grid for EV adoption, that we can be thoughtful in leveraging the excess capacity that we currently have on our grid in meaningful ways so that, everything is just not net new. We also are rolling out a new fleet program. We know that fleets play a significant role as it relates to the transportation sector. And so helping them convert to EVs, and whether that's helping to pay for the price of the charger itself or make ready costs, is something that we're extremely excited about. So a couple of programs there I'll highlight and talk further about a little later.
I just want to echo, Will, that, the time of use rates, I think, are pretty impactful. Looking at it from a customer perspective, the daytime charging, we have a lot of surplus energy here in the West, particularly during the day with a lot of the renewables coming online. And so, the avoided cost of energy here is our utility rates are 3 cents you can get during the day, and it goes up to 24 cents at peak time. So it's like an 8 times multiple. So those are, as we kind of let people see the economics of that, there's a real opportunity for people. And so I think, and I'd say those time of use rates are real key.
I'd say our real strength has been being an accelerator, either a connector with community resources. One of the precursors to our program, one of our local credit unions is able to work with an angel donor to an interest buy down program for consumers to become early adopters. We're also very active on helping them put together grants. So we've often helped communities be the first electric car charger, public electric car charger in the entire county in some instances. So we've been a sub-grant recipient for those along, or sometimes buy them outright. Also using grants to help actually the installation cost. It's not fair to ask a village to front the cost for installation if we give them a free charger. But we've just applied for a grant, which many of us were working on last week, for 250 new chargers across Southern Ohio, which has giant gaps, some of which are more than 100 miles at a time across major 4 lanes. So for us, it's sometimes being that last dollar into a project. We're able to create that local match for a federal or private grant, and bridge that capital, or sometimes even loan the capital if it's a reimbursable grant. Sometimes that is all it takes, is having that liquid cash for them to be able to pull it off. Other times it's the technical support for us to be able to pull the resources in, whether it's legal or engineering, and working through groups like EC to help put it all together. But often it's pulling all those resources together where communities, and we serve communities as large as Cleveland to small villages of 100 folks. So big and small, there's always a need for more resources and more technical expertise.
Great, thank you so much. And those are all really great examples of programs. And I think they also try to meet the needs, consumer needs, that a lot of other organizations find their consumers have as well. So those are also really usable examples. Kind of going off of what Luke just said, talking about the CFI grant and federal funding generally, how has the recent influx of federal funding impacted your plans and actions for charging installation? And then conversely, does that federal funding fall short in some areas? And then what ways can utilities help fill those gaps for their businesses and community?
It'll definitely fall short if we don't get accepted on our CFI application. Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I think so many people see it's really necessary, that infrastructure to really bring that up to speed nationally. That, it's gas stations spent a long time to build that infrastructure over time, and we really want to move that transition. And so where does that onus fall on? So I think really looking at saying, forgetting about who's paying for it, we really need to build this infrastructure. And I think that it's a great accelerator. So a lot of people are interested. I think there's a lot of competition out there based on everyone I talk to is putting in applications. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I agree. As a utility, some of the programs we're not eligible to go after directly, and we have to partner. But it's just a really exciting time, right? It's a once in a generation opportunity to make leverage of this federal funding in order to accelerate clean transportation. And so we are looking to partner and take advantage of as many incentives as possible for our states and municipalities to make it more cost effective for them to deploy charging infrastructure. So we're super excited about the NEVI program. We know that there are certain requirements within the NEVI program itself, right? It has to be at least 150 kW charger. It has to be within 1 mile of the highway. And so working with our partners, our states, our municipalities, we've done a couple of things. One, we have EV hosting capacity maps. So you can go to our website and see feeders that are our grid and where they're located. And so if a city like the District of Columbia wants to look at placing a charger close to a highway, they can see what infrastructure is there, and they can quickly look at what type of costs are associated with infrastructure work there. And so that's ways we're partnering with them. We're also partnering with them with letters of support for the applications itself on certain projects. We're also excited about the CFI program. I think the CFI program does a lot of great innovative things for our communities. The NEVI program is more so focused on this transportation highway corridor itself. The CFI program, the Charge and Fuel Infrastructure program, really focuses on our communities, the ones that are most impacted. And so when we think about our disadvantaged communities, our Justice 40 communities, those of our most vulnerable populations that may not have been able to take advantage of this electrification boom. And we've seen that from our programs. When we look at where the EV registrations are happening, they're typically are not in Black and brown communities. So we're really excited about what this CFI program to do to our disadvantaged communities, ensuring that all of our communities can take a part of this infrastructure. And so We are proposing programs that complement CFI as well as the IRA incentives and helping to really just offset a high percentage of costs. We're hoping that through federal, state, as well as utilities incentives for our Justice 40 communities, we can pay 100% of the cost of any installation or make-ready work, and then for other communities up to 80%. So super excited on those fronts.
And I think we're excited about the opportunities that CFI is bringing forward. As you mentioned, it's going to be tough competition for everybody applying, but there's an enormous need, much of which is overdue. And I think being very cognizant of where the resources are going, that we represent several different regions across the state. We're a statewide organization. So even our rural areas, it's necessary to electrify them for the urban areas to be able to commute to where they need to go, whether it's for healthcare at a VA clinic or whether it's to make it from one urban area to the next. And if you have a 200-300 mile gap in charging infrastructure, that makes that trip much more difficult. And frankly, folks may have to reroute their entire trip or reconsider what vehicle they're purchasing. We want to eliminate that concern, that anxiety, be able to have more resources available. We serve a lot of Justice 40 communities. Our proposal includes 40 different census tracts. So there's a lot of need, and the funding's welcome. Hopefully there's more of it to come, but there's definitely going to be enormous need as we keep electrifying and all the other ancillary benefits that come with that as well.
Awesome. And then we actually got a chat question that follows this question up pretty well. So I'm going to just jump to that one really quick. And as a gentle reminder to keep sending those chat questions because we will be getting to those after the panel. This question was posed directly to Will and Luke. It said, could you please describe how you are helping school districts and school bus companies convert their bus fleets to electric?
Yeah, that is just a great question. We are excited in our service territory, specifically in Montgomery County, Maryland. They have embarked on a partnership with Highland Electric, the school system, and ourselves to convert 100% of their fleet to electric. In a lot of the cases, from a utility perspective, we have gotten approval from our Maryland Public Service Commission to institute a pilot to help schools convert their fleets. And so we're looking at that, but also it's really about the communication and options and available. And so we have technical folks on our team that can work directly with our school system to help answer the tough questions. What does the cost look like? If I convert these chargers, when would I need to charge? What about the grid? Do I need a different feeder? All of those different installation questions that was posed earlier, we are helping by providing technical assistance. So looking forward to, as we clean, the Clean School Bus Grants Program come out, we are helping our municipalities and states apply for those grants in partnership with us. We are looking at vehicle to grid applications. We don't have any at the moment, but we know that that is a huge opportunity for school buses. We know that school buses will probably only be running during 7 to 9 a.m. and then maybe from 3 to 5 p.m. So what do you do with the school buses during that time? And so how to leverage school electric vehicle school bus applications for resiliency aspects are something that we're very interested in. So creating resiliency hubs. And I think a lot of that will start as we convert our school buses to electric.
So we actually included some buses in our CFI application charging infrastructure to prepare and lay the groundwork for it. We're very engaged with local school districts, local community action agencies, and helping be, again, that conduit to help bridge that gap, whether it's ecotourism, whether it's getting kids to school, again, whether it's healthcare connections. I think there's a robust conversation happening right now on how we eliminate some of the barriers for transportation. I mentioned we had the first rural electric transit bus in the state of Ohio. That was through a DOE grant we're very excited about. And we're doing a lot of testing with it right now to see what's possible and how it's able to handle different routes. So I think there's a lot more to come on that front, and I see us as a vital partner in that for our member communities and just one more resource for them to lean on. And our utilities, I would also be remiss in not mentioning, we work with the CRES. So in Ohio, as part of deregulation, we have CRESs. We are an aggregator ourselves, but our CRES is AEP Energy. And they're very actively engaged in that conversation with us and trying to find resources and tools and how to create new products to deploy those to represent all the things that were just described as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering that. And it's good to hear that you guys both have them at the top of your agenda. I'm sure a lot of utilities are considering this right now. Definitely a hot topic in EVs for sure. Moving on to another similar hot topic question that I had for you guys. So we've seen a lot of positive stories of vehicle to grid integration for resiliency and managing demand support. How are you guys approaching this technology, and also what excites you most about vehicle to grid technology? And then are there any stories that you've maybe seen from customers that excite you, or just customers looking forward to this technology as well?
I can jump in real quick. I think the technology itself excites me. One of our projects last year was creating the first net zero EMS station in the state of Ohio. And so as we're working with communities and building out smart design, making things EV ready. So having that outlets prepared for at least a level 2 within their footprint, if not some DC fast chargers on the outside of the envelope. But I think the promise of the new Silverado, the new Lightning, lots of applications. We also serve metro park districts, watershed districts where they have to have a lot of heavy vehicles. So those applications, whether it's them utilizing tools on the site of a job or for resiliency purposes, I think the sky's the limit. And I'm really excited by what's to come the next few years on this front.
Yeah, and same with me. I'm super excited as well. Again, we don't have any applications within our service territory yet. I do have some in my sister utilities up in Delmarva Power that we're currently piloting. I think with vehicle to grid, again, there's just a lots of possibilities. I think the school system and school buses is one that we have to explore, just because we know that those school buses will be sitting for a period of time, and how those can be leveraged for, again, resiliency hubs. I think that's just a great opportunity for us to fortify certain underserved communities to ensure that they have a place where they can shelter in place if there's a particular event that they need, where they can just have constant power. I do think we have to be careful, though. I think there's a lot of unknowns that we are dealing with in vehicle to grid application, especially the degradation of the battery and how we're using that to charge and discharge over a number of different operations. So I think we're going to take it slow, and we're going to learn and ensure that we can apply the appropriate value chain mechanisms to make that a supportive and profitable process.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now I have a more specific question specifically for Mark. I wanted to ask you about the utility organized statewide transportation electrification planning group that the city's joined. If you could just tell us a little bit more about that, because I think it's a very applicable model that other cities can use. So any advice for how other utilities or cities could get something like this started in their area?
Yeah, certainly it actually has been. So the Arizona Transportation Electrification Action Plan, if you actually just Google that, you can find it and read about it. But basically they brought together a lot of utilities, all 3 state utilities brought together a lot of stakeholders, and with topic areas of all the challenging things about what should building codes be that cities are adopting, how do we deal with equity and make sure it's equitable, and how do we deal with multifamily conundrum of really providing that and future-proofing a lot. And I think it does really need everyone coming together. So I think by really reaching out and forming a large coalition of people to really have those conversations, I think you do need everyone in the room, because, you know, even from us, from a city, as we plan, we have these great plans. We go to the utility, they say, well, yeah, no, not that area. We can't go there. And so it really needs everyone at the table. And I think, and even nonprofits and others all coming together, I think it was a really helpful conversation to come up with a plan. And it's actually a plan for 1.2 million EVs by 2030. So thinking of the big picture of, like, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. So you really need to think of what is the big picture before you start looking at the details of exactly how many chargers you're going to install today. You need to know where you're going.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. That is definitely very true. And I think that a lot of us can benefit from having a group like that in our city. So thank you so much. Now kind of pivoting towards William, this question specifically for you, but in your experience, what have you found to be the most successful messaging for informing the public about these ongoing projects and advancements? Because obviously communicating with the public is a little bit different than kind of communicating with the business leaders and the utilities themselves. So you could specify.
Yeah, it requires multiple touch points, multiple messaging in different ways. We know all of our communities have unique needs and challenges, and we have to be at the table to be able to partner with them in creating equitable and inclusive solutions where all of our communities can participate. One program I'm really excited about that my team had a huge hand in is our EV Smart program. And that's where we had to install about 250 chargers in partnership with our state and municipalities. And so these chargers couldn't go in private land, they had to go in public land. So we had to work closely with our states and municipalities, putting them in places like library, parks and recreation centers, schools, and other places for the community. And that required us to be engaged significantly with the communities and saying, do you want a charger here? How is it likely to be used? How close is it to certain aspects of the community, whether it's multifamily buildings? In some cases, we've leveraged the chargers to be used for municipal operations. We had one municipality in Prince George's County deploy our chargers in a way that they allowed them to electrify their police fleet. So just working hand in hand with the community-based organizations and municipalities to ensure that they understand the program, the benefits, because we know not everybody has an EV. There's a lot of different misconceptions and myths. And so we actually have a myth buster fact sheet around electrification. And so some folks, range anxiety is real, and we do understand that, but there are also some benefits. I don't know one person in my family, especially the women in my family, that likes to actually go to a gas station to pump gas. And so when you tell them the fact they'll never have to go to a gas station again, those are real tangible benefits for certain folks in the community that will help accelerate their adoption of EVs. And so everyone has their own story and their own motivations and timing for doing these things. And we want to make sure that they see us as a trusted energy advisor and resource that they can go to when they have these questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Kind of pivoting off of that, not going to the gas station, more charging at home. As we see the shift to home charging versus workplace versus public versus fleet depot charging, how is the grid going to grow and adapt for the changing dynamics of what's charging where and at what times? And that's kind of open to all of you, whoever has piece on that.
The creative solution real quickly. One of the nonprofits we work with is Solar United Neighbors. They have chapters across the country, different state organizations. And actually it started in Athens, Ohio, but now it's part of, I believe, all their co-ops where they help folks go solar together. But they've incorporated the option for folks to add level 2 chargers at the same time, at least the outlet, where they have an electrician on site. So that local charging definitely offsets the stress on the grid, and in fact creates a net benefit with all the ancillary benefits of that. So I think that's a really easy turnkey solution. I've also aware of some municipalities that have started changing code and building design as it relates to EV charger availability. When they're doing work in the garage, you already have an electrician there, some things that are simple as a code. But I think those are some really easy low-hanging fruit as it relates to the application of distributed generation and really distributed charging as well.
I have a different perspective, sort of unique to maybe sort of the West Coast, is that we actually would prefer people to do daytime charging versus when they're not at home, so workplace charging or a place they go out during the day, and not even overnight, because it's the lowest carbon energy during the day, and there's lots of surplus solar power on the grid and renewables on the grid during the day. So we actually want to create an incentive for them to come in to work and maybe even charge for free. And so they just charge at work only and then go home and don't charge at all. And so that we really encouraged, basically think that the grid is only at 50% load factor, meaning 50% of it's available, not used, and saving up for those peak times. So there's lots of spare capacity on the grid. So we really need to be thoughtful of how can we move and shift loads to that daytime and late night that can, when there's lots of spare capacity, where we could add as much unlimited amount of charging, all vehicles, if they could charge in those times when there's spare capacity on the grid. So I think it's really moving that way, both at home and as well during the day. But so it's awesome, yeah.
Yeah, those are two great examples that I would just want to add to really quickly. First, There is this misconception and rumblings that the grid can't handle the electrification needs in order to meet our goals that our cities and our states have. And I just want to, tackle that misconception just right on. As an engineer, I spent the first 10 years of my career in capacity planning, literally trying to design our future system. And I'll say that the electric grid, we will be ready, and we've always been ready. I think, whether it been the industrial boom, the air conditioning boom, the refrigeration boom, the dot-com boom, you name it, the data center boom that we're going through today, utilities have always been there ready to meet the needs of our society. And sure, there will be investments. No one is going to say there won't be investments, whether you want to have 5G or whether you want to have net zero buildings, investing in energy efficiency. All of those things would take investments, and this is no different. The grid will need investments to handle electrification, but we will be there. We have been able to partner with our cities and the developers to ensure that the grid can provide safe, secure, clean, and reliable power in the most equitable way. And so that's what we're going to continue to do. And I think our focus is, as we prepare the grid and as we make those investments, how do we ensure that all of our communities can participate, especially our most vulnerable communities? So we are also looking at programs to encourage adoption. We have a private fleet charging program that we just filed with our Public Service Commission, and this is focused on Justice 40 communities. We know historically, when we look at the fleet operations and where they're located, ideally they are in the communities of our Black, brown, and most vulnerable populations. So we're looking at programs that help to tie in the Justice 40 of the federal government grants with our particular incentives to ensure that we prioritize those fleet transformations, because those fleets are typically housed in communities of color that bear the most burden as it relates to climate change. So those are just some things that we're doing, but want to make sure that folks on this call and listening to this webinar is aware that utilities have dealt with different times in our society of electrification growth, and we don't see this as different. Sure, there's going to be some time difference, but we'll be ready to partner and make sure that we can meet the needs of our customers.
Excellent points. Thank you all so much. And Mark, you specifically brought up solar, and that's a really important topic, and a topic we're seeing actually a lot in the chat and the Q&A as well. So I wanted to pivot to some of those questions. We got a question from Beverly, and she asked, how are each of the speakers' jurisdictions employing solar, especially with schools, for creating that full closed loop for charging for those resilience hubs during emergencies? So Mark, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, certainly. Solar and batteries kind of combined. I think that's a really important aspect where you can, particularly on daytime charging, when you don't want to have solar during the day, go on a battery, and then use that battery to charge overnight. You really want to have them at the same time. The solar is in DC power, so it's actually perfect for just going straight into charging vehicles. So no, I think that we really see that opportunity of having solar connected to supplement our charging, and I think it really can provide greater capacity.
I think it's been most effective for us where there's been a lot of community engagement, where the local cities themselves have organized a broad variety of voices there to make sure the resiliency hubs are ready, to make sure renewables are there as part of that solution. In our rural areas, we've also been part of that conversation, help folks, when they're looking at putting a diesel generator, helping them evaluate solar and batteries instead as an alternative option, running the numbers for them to see if that's a viable option. And often it is the case that that's the much more cost-effective option in addition to environmentally more beneficial, not to mention more resilient. Nobody wants to go out and getting new fuels during a power outage. Having to feed a generator sounds terrible. So if you have solar on site that's there benefiting you all the time, not just as a backup fossil fuel station, that's obviously a win-win. So for us, I think I'm looking at the city of Dayton as a real model and the way they've been able to succeed with that, pulling coalitions together for planning purposes. And that's been really helpful for us as we look at either doing an RFP form for deployment of other assets or working with them in developing theirs, or helping on a grant like a CFI, we've already got the constituencies and the voices there, at least as a starting point of where the needs are, whether it's multifamily housing for charging or whether it's resiliency centers to make sure that we're preparing for the needs that folks will have.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that. Solar is just is a very important tool and resource in our goals of decarbonization. We partnered with Montgomery County in Maryland at their Brookville bus depot. And it's a microgrid solution where their bus depot is home to 100 buses that help transport the residents of Montgomery County, and they are committed to electrifying those buses. And what they did was install about 5 megawatts of solar canopy on their bus fleet, a really innovative design to use canopy operations to go over top of their buses. They put 5 megawatts of solar. They also partner with us on a 1 megawatt battery solution. And so when you combine solar with battery with electric vehicles, one of the things that you make is grid resiliency. It's one thing to convert your electric vehicles, but then if they are not able to be charged up, how do you ensure that they can meet the needs of the residents? So a resiliency component, as we electrify these different transportation sectors, we have to ensure that we create resiliency because no one wants to be waiting an hour for a bus. So we have to ensure that we can keep them on the road and we can keep them charging. And I think solar and storage provides a great mechanism to back up the grid and ensure that resiliency when it's needed.
If I could add to my previous comments, I think one of the areas we've been really focused on and had a lot of support in grants, public and private, is adding resiliency to our water systems. So looking beyond transportation, but also water. So we've been helping with battery backup at water plants, solar at water plants. The city of Athens, Ohio now has a solar project going up at the rec center, which is adjacent to the sewer plants. They'll have resiliency at both, charging for an EV fleet. I think all those synergies are really helpful to keep moving forward. And we had the first carbon fee in the country, so we used a portion of that this past year to add a new transformer, which is beneficial for solar, which is going to charge the EV bus, which is going to do all kinds of other things. So I think where those synergies meet, the municipal level is always a win-win.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And there's been another solar question that's come in the chat since then, so it's a very important subject to many, but in the Justice 40 community specifically, adding solar can be difficult, which you all touched on. Many of the citizens are not eligible for those tax credits, so understanding this, how can we keep moving forward to install solar in underserved communities?
Yeah, I'll start and really quickly. That's a great question. As we think about, our electric vehicle transportation, there are some people in our communities that don't own a car, right? And so what are we doing for those folks who don't own a car? And so then how do you work with your municipalities related to public fleets and all of those things? So you have to be encompassing in your thought process. You have to think equitable solutions. In this case, DC has been a leader for a number of years in their Solar for All program. And where DC will pay 100% of the cost of solar, I believe we're installing 5 kW systems on low-income customers' rooftops that they will be able to have at least a 50% reduction in their bill. We've just recently partnered with DC at the headquarters that I'm giving this webinar in downtown DC to leverage our rooftop to do more community solar. So there are ways that businesses and others can get involved in public-private partnerships to ensure that our Justice 40 communities, they can either benefit from community solar or they can take part of pretty innovative programs like DC's Solar for All program.
Yeah, the community solar programs are really important. We have ones with working with our utility where they're putting them on public housing and things, and all the residents get a $15 credit on their bill. And then other ones, we're also installing solar on low-income homes. And actually 6 kilowatts. So there you go, Will. So yeah, no, and I think that really helps in just helping eliminate energy poverty, and certainly affordability. And electric vehicles can be very affordable, particularly the used market for electric vehicles, and having a low-cost solution for transportation, because it does have that much lower cost at, essentially 30 cents a gallon versus, $5 a gallon. So it could be pretty inexpensive to operate an electric vehicle. So helping get those in the community through electric car shares and other means is really important.
And also that we actually launched a nonprofit affiliate for the purpose of building out generation. So in our case, large solar generation to help move the needle in both distributed and utility scale, but for the purpose of feeder aggregation programs. Ultimately, everybody benefits from lower rates. Everybody benefits from clean air. So for us, multi-pronged approach to see it happen. It's definitely challenging as you talk. Some of the challenges for distributed relates to accessibility. We try to partner with a lot of nonprofits to help scale that, work with local governments to help them tap into it, because this is good fiscal policy for our local governments as well. It's less resources they have to dedicate to the energy burden as a whole, as a community, if they've got that resiliency built in and long-term ownership of assets. So I think there's a lot of small solutions to a very large problem, but I think not forgetting equity as we move forward. I think the direct pay options as it relates to IRA is definitely a benefit moving forward, to where the tax appetite for nonprofits, for government entities really broadens that scope without as complete reliance on PPA agreements as has been in the past.
Great point. Thank you so much. Another question from the Q&A that is for all three of you, and some of you have touched on this already, but just kind of re-highlighting it. Beverly asks, can the other speakers address exactly how multifamily unit charging is being addressed in their plans?
I think, one of the most important areas is building codes. So we've been facilitating conversations between the utility and developers to really look at what are the solutions. It shouldn't necessarily fall on the developer when they're building a new building to plan for and install infrastructure to provide charging for 50% of to future-proof it for 50% of the stalls, because what that is. And so really trying to figure out what are solutions. I think Vancouver, Canada, originally in Vancouver, City of Vancouver, and they've actually had for about 10 years been having building codes requiring it in multifamily, and now 20% of car sales are electric vehicles in Vancouver, like just really making it available to people. It's really interesting how it can really accelerate the transformation on making it available. And so, but having things where there's hardwired connections where they can have a large number of stalls, but it's just allocating it to make sure they're not going above what can be provided by the transformer. So, but certainly any new developments should definitely be future-proofing to provide that infrastructure or space for future transformers, so that they're able to accommodate when very likely within 10 years, they might have 50% of the cars wanting to charge.
I'll just put it simply, we're including them in our grant applications. So multifamily is definitely an important considerations. We're building a more equitable, and again, multifamily covers a lot of folks. So making sure that folks are in that situation where they might not be able to charge directly in their own driveway, have access to being able to buy an electric car and making that an accessible solution for them.
Yeah, those are great solutions. Multifamily is a tough sector to be able to work with in this EV transformation, but we have experience as utilities. We've dealt with the multifamily sector for a number of years in our energy efficiency programs. So we have the relationships, and we know what incentive will make those property managers or property owners convert or take advantage. And so we do have a multifamily program where we offer rebates up to 80% of the cost of the charger and installation up to $30,000. That program, it was a slow start because we initiated this program in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. So a lot of folks that lived in multifamilies was just, trying to ensure that, they can cover their bills from tenants moving in and moving out and all the things that we went through from the pandemic. But in 2022, and even this year in 2023, this program has gone gangbusters. And so a lot of folks are taking advantage of that incentive up to $30,000 to install up to 4 level 2 chargers within their particular multifamily unit. And we're also pushing that forward. We also have another program that's in front of our commission where we are looking to pay more make ready. We've seen that from talking to our multifamily owners and developers. We've seen that's the biggest prohibitor. When you have a parking lot and your electrical system is on one end of the parking lot, but the parking spaces are here, you have to tear up pavement, you have to run conduit and those sorts of things. And so we're looking at trying to address make ready costs specifically to help to help those property managers overcome that barrier. And I agree with Mark and Luke. Definitely incentives and building codes and for new construction is something that we've been a part of as well.
Great, thank you so much. This next question is a really interesting and important consideration. It comes from Rob in the Q&A, and he had asked, are utilities at all focused on making the biggest users of gasoline use a priority for electrification? This would help the most gasoline burdened drivers switch to make things much easier for those drivers and also generate electricity sales for the utility while maximizing reductions in transportation related emissions by displacing that gasoline use. So has that ever been a consideration for any of your organizations? And how would you go about kind of addressing that?
Yeah, I'll just quickly start. Absolutely. I think that's the whole premise of our fleet programs, right? We know our fleets are having, whether it's a fleet of 10 vehicles or a fleet of 100 vehicles that are on the road, we are looking at ways to provide charging discounts for fleets, as well as installation and cost discounts for our fleets as well. So super excited about the program. But as I stated again, going back to the emphasis on equity, we know a lot of our fleets are located in disadvantaged and minority communities. So there's a win-win approach to focuses on fleet that I agree with. One, you're targeting the communities that are most impacted, and you're targeting the biggest polluters in the transportation sector. So a lot of great things are focusing in on those high users fleets.
Yeah, definite role for education and awareness, though, of the opportunities, because those high gasoline users, it's the savings from shifting to electric are far greater. So even at 12,000 miles a year at $4.50 a gallon for gasoline, over 10 years, you'll save $25,000, like just on cost. So it really is an opportunity. So kind of promoting that for people to realize you can almost cover the cost of your vehicle just in the gas savings alone, let alone maintenance and other things that you'll have. So no, I think education awareness as well, getting it out there, people to see, what the opportunity is, I think is really great.
I mentioned my excitement with some of the new vehicles coming online as it relates to fleets, particularly municipal fleets. The trucks are going to really move that market. We're seeing a lot of code enforcement vehicles now where there's perfectly appropriate vehicles already in place. We had the first electric police car in the state of Ohio. It was a Model Y. We provided the funding for that charger, and they approached us, actually. They were excited that it penciled out, so they wanted to give it a try, and it's been great. One that's not been mentioned, though, outside of fleets, but I think in the related realm that we're very excited about is helping convert lawn equipment. So a lot of the highest percentage-wise emissions are coming from two-stroke weed eaters and the like. And so for us, finding pathways for at least our local governments and hopefully eventually individuals as well to find their way to electric equipment with all the benefits that come with that as well. So I think looking at fleets and equipment, whether it's golf carts or weed eaters and mowers, or trucks and cars, like a broad approach of the folks who are purchasing and utilizing these vehicle technologies.
Yeah, even scooters, electric bikes, all that thing to have charging infrastructure that's available. And that's actually a good equitable solution too, because they're very affordable and can actually be a great transportation solution. So it's all e-micromobility. Yeah.
We actually had one of our smaller communities, Rio Grande, Ohio, which I am pronouncing that correctly for the community. They have electric bikes and actually improved the response time for their officers because they were able to take pathways they wouldn't normally be able to take. So they were very excited for their officers' sake to put a convert to some electric bikes within their village fleet. There's some small electric companies popping up.
Does it have a siren? Does it have a siren?
I don't know. That's a good question. We need to find out.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for answering these rapidly coming in questions. It's really easy to see that the community is excited about these opportunities. So we look forward to seeing these programs take off. As our kind of last question, kind of the overarching theme, I'm going to ask each of you, what do you think should be the first step in involving utilities in your charger installation projects?
I'll start, and it's just making us aware. Again, ensuring that you understand what rebates and incentives are available as quickly as possible is extremely important, and we can be there to partner with you at the table, doing site visits and other things to ensure that you have the technical capabilities to be able to go down your EV path. So don't wait. Call us as soon as you think about it. We're happy to partner, happy to have a site visit, looking at your potential equipment behind the meter and what upgrades may be needed and what costs you're looking at, not only from a capital perspective, but also from an operations perspective. So, use your utility. We're here to partner and would love to help you convert your fleet and adopt, a cleaner form of transportation.
I'd say from a lesson learned point of view, great point. I think for sure engage them in the sense that I would say don't do it as a one-off, like, oh, we've got charging, we've got here, so let's engage them about this site and it's about the. I think it's really important. We, for our airport, did an analysis of every single, what is the total capacity, and looking at, we're going to install 1,800 chargers there over time. So where are we going to put them, and what parking lots and things. And even if we went to the utility and said about a certain, we want parking lot C to be all electric. And they said, any lot but lot C, because that was fed by a different feeder. So they said, you can put it anywhere else. So we switched it over, made the plan different. And so it's really important to do that. But I think overall, do the assessment of every facility, what you have in capacity and what you'll need in the future, because if you don't know what you're going to be planning for, it's really difficult to be preparing for that in a large amount of funding, because the cost is pretty high in some cases to actually, some of our charging stations, it could be up to $100,000 to put in level 2 charger if it's, if the equipment needs upgrading and transformers need upgrading. And so, no, I think definitely doing some city, business-wide assessments of exactly everything you'll need for the future, and then approach your utility with that.
I just echo that. I think early planning and communication and engagement. I think often with new construction, I'm always there whispering in their ear saying, plan for conduit for chargers in the future. So I think just planting that seed as often as frequently as possible for the community projects that matter to you, to ones you have the ability to help facilitate. I think that's always value added, and hopefully can save a lot of money and help us further our ability to do more stuff. A lot easier to lay the wire if the conduit's already there than if to worry about concrete or asphalt or whatever's already in the way, or the building itself. It's way easier to deal with it if it's been prepared for in the beginning.
Very true. Thank you guys so much. Those are all great first steps. And I feel that this audience is now well equipped to get out there and get those projects rolling. So thank you guys so much. Thanks to all our speakers, as well as all of our participants sending in those questions. This was a really great and insightful conversation. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.